Aloha and welcome to Experience 27 Five Problems Part 2. We're going to take care of the second problem of Santiago Valderrama's blog post. We're going to do similar as exercise 20 or experience 26. We're going to create a GitHub repo, clone it to our laptop, open the repo in VS Code, set up the coding standards for TypeScript and ESLint. And then we're going to create two files, index.html and then a ziplist ts, where we're going to have our functions that we're going to write. And then we're going to show them in the browser, showing the JavaScript running in your client. So let's get started. We're going to create a new, before I start that, I start my timer. New GitHub repo. Call it zip list, make it private, add a README, create the repository, download it or clone it with GitHub Desktop, put it in the place where we want it, and then we want to open it in Visual Studio. You can configure GitHub Desktop to open in your favorite IDE. For this class, we'll be using Visual Studio Cafe, or Visual Studio, excuse me, code. I don't need that. So here's my new project. Yes, I trust myself. So now let's go and download. So right mouse click, save link as. It's not sum of numbers, it is zip list. Save link as 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 zip list. We've got our 5 files. We want to rename them. Again, we want it to get rid of the sample. So it's a .eslint ignore, and we're ignoring the JavaScript files. We want ESLint to just run on our TypeScript files. We want to rename this one. Again, hit return, get rid of the sample, and it is a .eslintrc file. And again, you can see that it's got Airbnb style TypeScript from Airbnb and the recommended type check for TypeScript. And then we have some rules that we've turned off because we don't care that we don't have parens on our arrow functions, etc. Rename the gitignore. Again, we don't want to store the .vs Code directory or the node modules directory because they have specific information about your laptop or your development environment that we don't want to share with other people working on the same project. They'll have their own data associated with their machine. Again, rename it, and this time we want package.json, not the period package.json. This is where we define all the node modules we're going to port from Node and any scripts that we want to run the project. And then lastly, we want to rename our sample types tsconfig for our TypeScript configuration, telling us what compiler options we want, what files we want to include, and what directories / files we don't want to look at when we're running our compiler. We then want to open the terminal, and then we want to run npm install to get all the packages. And again, on Windows boxes, this may take a little bit longer if your virus scanner has to scan all the files that you're downloading. So if you are running on a Windows box, you may want to turn off your real-time scanning while you're doing this development and turn it back on when you're done, so that you don't have the delay of the scanner. Certainly in a WAD, you don't want to have any delays due to your development environment not running well. Okay, so now we want to create an index.html file. File, new file, index.html. We do want to add it, create the file. And again, I installed the HTML5 boilerplate, so I can just grab the boilerplate, zip list. I want a script tag to load my JavaScript. And it's going to be called ziplist.js. So that's going to be the compiled JavaScript file from our ziplist.typescript or .ts file. So again, I want my ziplist.ts, new file, ziplist.ts. I want to add it. So this is our TypeScript file that we're going to compile into JavaScript, and then we'll run the JavaScript in our browser. So what are we working on? We want a function called ziplist that it takes two lists of equal length and returns the result of alternating taking elements from the first one and the second one. So given the two lists A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3, it should return the list A1, B2, C3. So let's see if we can get that in TypeScript. So we have a function, zip list. It takes a list of unknown, because we don't know the type of that first list. It could be strings, it could be numbers, it could be objects, we just don't know. And list 2, again of type unknown. Again, in TypeScript, we have to supply the type of things, and we just don't know at this time what it will be, but we know it will be an array. So I'm looking at what GitHub Copilot, it's returning an unknown array, that's good. We create a result. We then loop over the list, the first list, and then we push the list's item and then list 2, and then we return result. That looks good. We've got some ESLint errors, which is fine because ziplist is defined but never used, and we don't have a new line, so that fixes the new line. So now let's console log ziplist of ABC 1, 2, 3. So again, GitHub Copilot has been watching me do this several times, and so it knows what I'm looking for. Now, again, I don't have my ziplist.js because I haven't compiled it. So let's npx tsc, that's running the compiler. I now have my ziplist.js. I can go back, open the command palette, live preview in an external browser, open my inspect it to get to the console. I got an array of 6 items. That's good. Even better, it's got a string, a number, a string, a number, a string, and a number. That's exactly what we expected. And this array is of unknown type, so we can have a heterogeneous array. So it does, all items don't have to be the same type. Now, if we tried to use any, ESLint does not like any, because any means it could be anything. That's too vague for ESLint. You want to be more specific. So that's why we want to use unknown instead of any. That's an important thing to know. So now let's look at the second problem. We want to write a function called ziplist the functional way that does the same thing but using array functions instead of a for loop. So function zip list the functional way. List unknown, returns an unknown, and then That's an interesting solution. Because this is an array of any, so we want to say, oops. Can we do that? So let's create our const result, the const result, which is an unknown array, and then we're going to initialize it with unknown. I actually don't like this solution. I don't like this solution, so I'm going to get rid of it. So now I want list for each. So I'm going to loop over each item in the list, and I want a function that takes element and index, because the callback function for each can take up to 3 parameters. The element, the item that we're looped, each item in the list, the index of that item, and the third parameter is actually the array that we're looping over. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to go result.push element, and then the list 2 at that same index. And then I don't want a blank line, and then I want to return result. And then I'd want a new line at the end of the file. The functional way, give me a new line. I don't see any red squigglies, so now let's recompile our TypeScript to update the JavaScript. Go back over here and reload. So we should get 2 arrays. And we get 2 arrays, and they are A1, B2, C3, they're the same. So we now have our 2 implementations of the zip list function, one using simple for loops, and the other using for each, which is a functional way of looping over an array. And we can check to see if we have, I don't see any ESLint errors, but let's double check. Lint. So we have no ESLint errors. Again, we get a warning on the React version, but we haven't installed React. That's not a problem. It's just ESLint knows about React, so it's wanting to know what version it's going to be checking, if it's going to be checking any. So now let's go and make sure that our code is pushed to GitHub. And I finished this in 1240. Push to origin. And then I can view on GitHub, or I can look at this tab, reload. And I've got my files. Looks good. I have 1 branch. I have 2 commits. Done. And my initial commit when I created the thing. Okay. So, excuse me. Thank you for watching this brief screencast on using ESLint, GitHub, TypeScript, VS Code for writing TypeScript and getting it to run in your browser. Thank you.